What happens when forbidden love turns into deadly obsession? How far would someone go to protect their darkest secrets? Get ready for a gripping tale of love, deception, and murder, where the lines between passion and destruction blur. Will justice be served, or will the lies buried in this affair haunt these families forever? On the evening of May 12, 2010, the quiet suburb of Raleigh was rocked by the discovery of a horrific murder. What appeared to be the perfect life of a devoted housewife unraveled into a tale of infidelity and deadly obsession, ultimately leading to bloodshed. The investigation would peel back layers of deceit, betrayal, and forbidden passion that tore a family apart. Lily Martinez had always been known in her neighborhood as the ideal homemaker. At 33, she had 2 children with her husband, Carlos Martinez, a hardworking construction foreman. They lived in a modest but comfortable home in a peaceful Raleigh neighborhood. Lily was admired for her kindness and her commitment to her family. On the surface, her life seemed flawless: a loving husband, 2 beautiful children, and a cozy home. But as with many seemingly perfect stories, dark secrets festered just below the surface. Carlos, 35, had been with Lily for over a decade. He was a man of few words, dedicated to his work and his family. His long hours on construction sites often kept him away from home, but he believed it was a small price to pay for providing his family with a good life. Carlos took pride in what he had built: financial stability, a comfortable home, and what he thought was a happy marriage. Lily's cousin, Amanda, had always been close to her. The 2 women grew up together, more like sisters than cousins, sharing everything from childhood secrets to teenage dreams. Amanda had married Tony Sandoval, a successful real estate agent known for his charm and good looks. The 2 couples frequently spent time together, attending family gatherings and local events. Over time, however, something began to shift for Lily. Despite having everything she thought she wanted, a growing emptiness gnawed at her. Carlos was constantly working, often leaving before dawn and returning long after sunset. His dedication, while commendable, left Lily feeling increasingly lonely. Their conversations became brief, mostly about the children or the house, and the passion that had once filled their marriage was now almost non-existent. During this time, Tony, Amanda's husband, started paying more attention to Lily. He was everything Carlos wasn't: charming, attentive, and quick to offer a compliment or a flirtatious smile. Tony had a bit of a reputation for being a ladies' man, but Lily had always dismissed his behavior as harmless. However, as Carlos became more absent, she found herself drawn to Tony's charisma. It began innocently. At family gatherings, Tony would make Lily laugh with his jokes, or they would have long, personal conversations when Amanda was preoccupied with the kids. He seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and emotions, something Lily hadn't felt from Carlos in years. As time went on, their connection deepened. What had started as playful banter slowly evolved into something far more dangerous. By early 2009, Lily and Tony were deep into a full-blown affair. They were careful, meeting in secret whenever possible, always ensuring no one would suspect a thing. Their relationship was filled with passion, excitement, and the thrill of being discovered. For the first time in years, Lily felt truly alive, desired, and wanted. But everything came crashing down on May 12, 2010, when Lily Martinez was found dead in her home by her husband Carlos, who had returned from work earlier than expected. Her lifeless body was discovered in the kitchen, lying in a pool of blood, a single stab wound to her chest. Carlos immediately called 911, his voice shaking with horror and disbelief. The Raleigh Police Department responded swiftly, and Detective Alex Navarro, known for his meticulous investigative style, was assigned to the case. The crime scene was thoroughly examined, and while it initially appeared to be a burglary gone wrong, the lack of forced entry and the specific targeting of Lily suggested something far more personal. Neighbors were interviewed, but no one reported seeing or hearing anything unusual that night. On May 14, 2010, Detective Navarro began questioning those closest to Lily, starting with her husband, Carlos. He sat across from Navarro in the small, dimly lit interview room at the station, his face etched with grief, his eyes red from days of crying. Carlos appeared genuinely devastated by his wife's death, insisting that he had no enemies and couldn't fathom who would want to harm her. When asked about their marriage, Carlos admitted that things hadn't been perfect. Lily had seemed distant in recent months, but he assumed it was just the stress of managing the household and raising their children while he worked long hours. Navarro pressed Carlos about his whereabouts on the day of the murder. Carlos explained that he had been at work all day, leaving early in the morning and returning home around 4:30 p.m., only to find the gruesome scene awaiting him. When Carlos discovered Lily's body, he provided the names of his colleagues who could confirm his alibi. Detective Navarro followed up with Carlos's employer and co-workers, all of whom confirmed that Carlos had been on the job site from 7 a.m. until nearly 5 p.m. With Carlos's alibi solidly in place, Navarro knew he had to look elsewhere for answers. Next, Detective Navarro turned his attention to Lily's cousin Amanda and her husband Tony Sandoval. The interview took place at the Sandoval home, where the couple sat together on their living room sofa, hands clasped tightly. Amanda was visibly shaken, her voice trembling as she described her relationship with Lily. She spoke of how close they had been, more like sisters than cousins. But in recent months, Amanda had noticed a change in Lily. She had become more withdrawn, less communicative, and seemed burdened by something she wouldn't share. Amanda attributed it to possible marital troubles but had never pressed Lily for details. Tony, however, appeared more composed. He expressed shock at Lily's death and insisted he had no idea who could have committed such a crime. When asked about his whereabouts on the day of the murder, Tony claimed he had been at a business meeting for most of the day. He provided details of the meeting and the names of those who could vouch for him. Detective Navarro noted Tony's calm demeanor throughout the questioning. Unlike Amanda, who was visibly distraught, Tony seemed unnervingly in control of his emotions, which Navarro found peculiar under the circumstances. As Navarro wrapped up the interviews, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than had been revealed. Amanda's account of Lily's recent behavior hinted at underlying issues, and Tony's calmness in the face of such tragedy was unsettling. Navarro knew he had to dig deeper. He instructed his team to verify Tony's alibi and to keep a close eye on both him and Carlos as the investigation progressed. On May 18, 2010, the investigation took a major turn when Navarro and his team uncovered a critical lead. During a routine examination of Lily's phone records, Navarro noticed a series of text messages that stood out. The messages, which were flirtatious and intimate, were exchanged with a contact saved under a pseudonym. This immediately raised red flags for Navarro, who suspected these messages might hold the key to understanding what had happened. The texts revealed a side of Lily no one had known about, a passionate, secretive relationship that had been carefully hidden from both Carlos and Amanda. Navarro ordered his team to trace the number associated with the pseudonym, hoping it would lead to more answers. When the trace came back, the number was linked to none other than Tony Sandoval, Amanda's husband. The revelation stunned Navarro, as it indicated that Lily had been involved in an affair with her cousin's husband for nearly a year. The affair had been conducted with extreme caution. Lily and Tony communicated primarily through coded messages and only met in places where they were unlikely to be seen together. Their relationship had given Lily the attention and affection she craved, but it had also placed her in a perilous situation. With Tony married to Amanda and Lily married to Carlos, their affair was a ticking time bomb, poised to destroy both families. 2 days later, on May 20th, 2010, Tony Sandoval was brought back in for questioning. This time, Detective Navarro approached the interview with a different strategy. Armed with evidence of the affair, Navarro was determined to push Tony into revealing more. As the interview began, Tony maintained his calm and composed demeanor, but Navarro wasted no time confronting him with the text messages. Initially, Tony denied any wrongdoing, claiming the messages were harmless and that nothing significant had transpired between him and Lily. However, as Navarro pressed with more details, Tony's composure began to falter. The weight of the evidence became undeniable, and under pressure, Tony finally admitted to the affair. He confessed that their relationship had been passionate and intense, but he insisted it was nothing more than a fling. Tony claimed he never intended to leave Amanda and had ended the relationship with Lily just weeks before her death. He portrayed the affair as a mistake, something that spiraled out of control but was now in the past. With this new information, Navarro turned his attention to Amanda. During her questioning, Amanda broke down in tears. She admitted she had suspected Tony of infidelity for some time but never imagined it could involve her own cousin. Amanda revealed that she had noticed changes in Tony's behavior, his frequent absences and secretive phone calls, but had never confronted him directly. Despite her suspicions, Amanda believed Tony's reassurances until Navarro presented her with the truth. The revelation devastated her. But she had no further information to implicate Tony directly in Lily's murder. Her world was shattered by the betrayal, but she was as much in the dark about the murder as the investigators had been. Tony continued to insist he had nothing to do with the murder, but everyone sensed there was more to the story. What truly happened was that on the morning of May 12, 2010, Carlos left for work as usual, unaware that his world was about to be destroyed. Lily and Tony had planned to meet that day. Tony had told Amanda he had a client meeting, and Lily had sent her children to school, eagerly awaiting Tony's arrival. Lily made sure the house was spotless, her appearance perfect, everything just right for their rendezvous. Tony arrived at the Martinez home around noon, and Lily greeted him at the door. They quickly found themselves in each other's arms, but something unexpected happened during their moment of passion. Lily moaned her husband's name, and everything changed. The mood was ruined, and she suddenly began to feel a wave of guilt. Clearly, she still loved her husband. What am I even doing? She asked herself. Tension filled the air, a sense of urgency that neither of them could place. Perhaps it was the mounting guilt or the growing fear of being caught, but their usual passion was now tinged with something darker. They argued briefly. Lily was becoming increasingly paranoid about their affair being exposed, and she wanted to end it. Tony, however, insisted they could continue as long as they were careful. The argument escalated quickly, fueled by jealousy, frustration, and the pressure of keeping their secret. That was when Lily threatened to tell Amanda, Tony's wife and her own cousin, if he didn't leave her alone. In a moment of blind rage, Tony grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter. What happened next was a blur. Before either of them realized it, Lily was on the floor, blood pooling around her as the knife fell from Tony's hand. Panicked, Tony fled the scene, grabbing the knife but failing to wipe it down, too consumed by fear to think clearly. He ran to his car, his mind racing with the horror of what he had just done. Lily, the woman he had claimed to love, was now lying dead in her own kitchen, the life drained from her body. Back to the case following these revelations, the investigation took on a new urgency. Detective Navarro and his team worked tirelessly to gather more evidence linking Tony Sandoval to the murder. On May 18, 2010, they made a breakthrough. Surveillance footage from a store near the Martinez residence was reviewed, and it showed Tony Sandoval in the vicinity on the day of the murder. The footage contradicted Tony's earlier claim that he had been at a business meeting during that time. Upon further investigation, Navarro discovered that the meeting Tony had mentioned had been canceled, unraveling his alibi. In addition to the surveillance footage, forensic analysis of the crime scene revealed a partial fingerprint on the back door of the Martinez house. The fingerprint matched Tony, but when questioned, Tony claimed it must have been left during a previous visit to the house. Navarro was skeptical of this explanation, especially considering the growing pile of evidence against Tony. By May 21, 2010, Detective Navarro had gathered enough evidence to move forward. The surveillance footage, the fingerprint, the dismantled alibi, and the affair's motive painted a damning picture. Navarro obtained a warrant for Tony Sandoval's arrest. That afternoon, Tony was taken into custody without incident and charged with Lily Martinez's murder. The arrest sent shockwaves through both families and the entire Raleigh community. The affair, which had been carefully hidden for nearly a year, was now exposed, and the consequences were devastating. Tony's actions had not only taken Lily's life but also destroyed his own marriage and shattered the trust between the two families. As Tony sat in his cell awaiting trial, the reality of his actions began to sink in. What had started as a secret affair had spiraled into a deadly confrontation, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. As the case moved toward trial, the prosecution built a strong case against Tony Sandoval. They portrayed him as a man unable to handle the pressures of his double life, who ultimately resorted to murder to protect his secrets. The defense, however, argued there was no concrete proof Tony had killed Lily and suggested someone else, aware of the affair, could have framed him. On June 5, 2010, Tony Sandoval's trial began, drawing widespread attention from the media and the Raleigh community. The courtroom was packed, with reporters lining the hallways, and the trial became the subject of daily conversation. The prosecution wasted no time laying out their case. They presented a detailed timeline of events, supported by an overwhelming amount of evidence. The text messages between Lily and Tony were a key component of the prosecution's case, clearly illustrating the affair and the escalating tension between the two. These messages painted a picture of a relationship that had grown increasingly volatile in the weeks leading up to Lily's death. Surveillance footage was presented next, capturing Tony near the Martinez home on the day of the murder. This evidence directly contradicted Tony's claim that he had been at a business meeting, which the prosecution pointed out had been canceled. The footage placed Tony at the scene when he claimed to be elsewhere, casting serious doubt on his credibility. The prosecution also presented forensic evidence, including the partial fingerprint found on the back door of the Martinez house. The fingerprint matched Tony's, placing him at the scene in a way that could not be explained away as a previous visit. This physical evidence was critical in linking Tony directly to the crime. Witnesses were called to the stand to testify about the deteriorating relationships between the two couples. Neighbors and friends described how Lily and Carlos had grown distant and how Tony's behavior had changed as he became more secretive and withdrawn. These testimonies helped establish a motive, suggesting that Tony was under immense pressure as his affair with Lily began to unravel. Carlos Martinez's testimony was one of the most emotional moments of the trial. He recounted the day he found his wife's body, his voice heavy with grief and disbelief. He spoke of his shock, not only at her death but also at discovering her affair with Tony. Carlos's testimony added a personal and heartbreaking dimension to the case, reminding everyone of the real human cost of the crime. Amanda Sandoval also took the stand. Her testimony was a mix of betrayal and sorrow. She described how she had always trusted Tony, but had suspected something was wrong in the months leading up to Lily's death. Amanda spoke about her confrontation with Tony after his arrest, where the full extent of his lies became clear. She explained how their marriage, once strong, had crumbled under the weight of his deceit. Amanda's pain was palpable as she recounted how Tony's actions had shattered their lives. Throughout the trial, the prosecution argued that Tony Sandoval had acted out of desperation. Faced with the threat of Lily exposing their affair and destroying his marriage, Tony chose to silence her permanently. The evidence, both physical and testimonial, painted a picture of a man who had been pushed to the edge and made a deadly decision to protect his secrets. As the trial progressed, the jury listened intently, aware that they were deciding the fate of a man who had torn two families apart. The evidence was overwhelming, and the case against Tony was strong. The community watched and waited, knowing that the outcome of this trial would have lasting consequences for everyone involved. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached a verdict. Tony Sandoval was found guilty of second-degree murder. The evidence, though circumstantial in some areas, was strong enough to convince the jury of his guilt. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. In the wake of the trial, Amanda filed for divorce from Tony, leaving behind the life they had built together. She moved away from Raleigh, seeking a new start away from the painful memories. Carlos Martinez, still reeling from the loss of his wife and the betrayal, continued to live in the house where the tragedy occurred, a constant reminder of the life he once had. The neighborhood, once vibrant and close-knit, was left haunted by the events. Whispers of the affair and murder lingered long after the trial, serving as a cautionary tale of how easily secrets could turn deadly. The story of Lily Martinez's tragic death is a stark reminder of the dangers of deceit and the lengths people will go to protect their secrets. In the end, the affair that was supposed to be a secret passion became a deadly obsession. But this is nothing compared to the case where a housewife's secret affair with her neighbor's son ends in death. The unending family and neighborhood drama continues, so give it a watch and subscribe for more.